You know, whenever we talk about graffiti in the greater Portland area, you flood our emails and our voicemail boxes, and that's great. We love that. You tell us you hate it and that it's an eyesore and you wonder why nobody does anything about it. Well, then you'll love tonight's big story. A 28-year-old who's living in Northeast Portland is beginning a 2.5-year prison sentence tonight for slopping graffiti all over the Portland area. Here he is after getting caught in the act by Portland police. His name is Jerry Mijangos, and his tag is KASR. You may have seen it around Portland. Police think he's done it more than 800 times. There are many interesting parts to this story. The first is how it took so long for him to be held accountable. Today I got to talk with Officer Nathan Kirby-Glatkowski, one of the 2 officers focused on graffiti vandals in Portland.
You know, this is a situation where I've been investigating Mr. Jerry Mijangos for almost 4 years. I've done 4, myself and my partner, Officer Amelia Floor, on the neighborhood response team. We've done 4 rounds of cases on Mr. Mijangos. During the first one back in 2021, you know, we sent a whole stack of cases to the district attorney's office. We made an arrest. We interviewed Mr. Mijangos. I was really hopeful at that point that we would resolve the situation and they wouldn't continue tagging, and we would be done. We would have a success. Unfortunately, Mr. Mijangos just continued unabated. There were other arrests by patrol catching him in the act, making tags. We put additional stack of cases together. My partner and I again investigated another series of cases, several of them felonies. Many different victims. Mr. Mijangos is somebody that targeted small businesses, public buildings, roadways, but you know, we can't understate the impact on everybody, but especially his impact on small businesses was pretty profound. Right across people's windows and doors and on their businesses, it was there were a lot of victims that were really hurt by him.
In fact, he says to this day, they don't really know the total number of tags this guy painted around the city and how much it cost folks to clean it up. After that first set of cases, police put together another set because the tagger was painting like it was no big deal. Mijangos was arrested again, pled guilty, and was sentenced to probation in April of 2023, basically saying he wasn't going to do it anymore. You know what? He lied. A month later, he was back at it, so police put together a third set of cases last winter, and he was jailed in January, eventually released, and you'll never guess what happened next. He was back at it again.
I was really hopeful we were there. You know, he spent several weeks in jail after that arrest. However, when he was released, he immediately went back out and started offending again. Mr. Mijangos was probably, by the time he was most recently arrested, our most prolific tagger in the city. He was up everywhere, and he had no compunctions about putting his tag in places where it had a pretty horrific impact. 30 months in prison is a long time. I hope that sends a very clear signal to anyone out there doing graffiti that there's a consequence. This is not an activity that you get a blank check to go do. There is a point where you may spend years of your life in prison for continually vandalizing property that is not yours.
You say there's a high price to pay, but with his earlier cases, there wasn't.
You know, the court system takes time. We were also in the middle of the pandemic, and things were complicated and moving a little slower there in 2021 and 2022. I'd like to say that currently we have a lot of cooperation from the district attorney's office. We work with really great district attorneys there. And you know, we're seeing some speedier resolution of our cases. Yeah.
It does feel like the city has sort of turned a corner and said no more.
Yeah, I think that we got to a point in this city where graffiti reached an egregious level, and it has a real impact on human beings stepping out of their house and going to work or going to where they play or going to wherever they do. They see this graffiti everywhere, and it's generally indicative of a criminal permissiveness. It's ugly, it's disgusting, it's a blight on our society. And we're at a point now where I think most of society feels that way and wants action done on this. So if you're out there doing graffiti, if you're out there doing vandalism, it is criminal, and we are going to come find you and hold you accountable for that. This is what the city wants. This is what I want, and we'll make it happen.
Now again, Mijangos is now starting a 2.5-year prison sentence. I wondered about what may have driven him to do this over and over again. What's his motivation? What's he get out of this?
Mr. Mijangos and I have had several interviews. We've spoken several times. This is a thing that he's told me he just does, and he isn't going to stop doing. He told me that from day one.
But does he consider himself an artist and this is his expression, or is it him giving the middle finger to the man?
I mean, he believes that he's painting, he's not vandalizing. He believes that he's out there doing what he needs to do to feel whole. Well, what he needs to do to feel whole makes a whole lot of other people hurt. And I think he's got that message today.
Leaning into graffiti cases recently, in late June, officers raided this house in southeast Portland after a documentary on graffiti in Portland from a group called KASR revealed spray paint warehouse in this garage. The man interviewed tried to conceal his identity, but the cops knew him from earlier encounters. The documentary also included this spectacular footage of another man rappelling down off the Fremont Bridge to spray paint his tag, Monk 6. I asked Officer Kirby Glatkowski about that as well.
Monk 6 was the tagger who did that rappelling, and we're investigating Monk 6, and we'll see where that goes. The other person that was prominently shown in that Vice News documentary, sorry, it wasn't Vice News, it was former Vice guys, Chaos Town. So the other tagger, the other graffiti vandal that was prominently shown in that Geimer, my partner and I and the neighborhood response team did a search warrant at that location that was in that video, and we seized approximately 1,900 cans of spray paint out of their graffiti warehouse. A graffiti warehouse that we believe was shared by many vandals as they went out and did what they did in our city. And so I think that action and a pending indictment that we expect very soon on that case, plus this sentencing of Mr. Mijangos, and additional recent indictments that we've done on taggers such as Cam1, Tendo, Beer, Thuja, Geometro, Omega, the 8 or 9 significant, high-level, deeply investigated cases that we've done in the last year and a half, 2 years. I think that message is getting out, that we are not easy pickings, that City of Portland is not just free for the taking and people can come here and do all the graffiti they want to do. We'll continue that action, and we'll continue to try to cause that deterrence and change that perception. And for folks such as Mr. Mijangos, we'll be looking to get prison time for them.
I got to tell you, I was impressed the way he rattled off all those tags. Clearly knows his folks. Mijangos pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree criminal mischief, by the way, according to the Oregonian. It was part of a plea deal that gives him credit for time served. He's also able to get eligible for time off for good behavior. So, what do you think about the sentencing and what Portland police have to say about graffiti in our city? Not harsh enough? Too harsh? Email us, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, while we're talking about law and order, let's talk about Multnomah County Sheriff and whether she will book people into jail who are arrested for violating Portland's homeless camping ban. Now, you may recall that the city has an ordinance, it's a city law, that makes it illegal to camp in many areas. If campers are offered available shelter and refuse, well, then they can be fined or taken to jail. But when the first person was actually taken to the jail, the sheriff said, no, we're not going to book. So when it comes to a carrot and stick, no stick there. The sheriff's decision was a shock to city leaders and apparently came because of a lack of collaboration. Imagine that. So after meeting with at least once, more than once, with the mayor since then, the sheriff, Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell, is easing up on her new rule, sort of. Now she says at some time in the future, she will allow illegal campers to be booked into the jail as long as there's a program in place to try to plug them into social services. We talked with the sheriff today. Listen closely to the second part of her comment here.
This is a city ordinance, so this requires extended collaboration between the city and the county and myself on how we're going to move forward, again, to ensure that we're prioritizing community safety and accountability, but also ensuring that there is a process in place when someone is booked into our booking center, that we're able to intervene in a time when someone may have a moment of clarity and be able to reconnect them with the Services Coordination Center, or any service that we're able to provide. And that was what we have been working on over the last couple of weeks.
Okay, so it's almost like the sheriff wants a sort of deflection style system set up for these folks once they're brought to the jail. Something that can be offered to them when they're passing through the jail. And by the way, yes, you did hear that correctly, passing through. Because if all they have done is violate the city camping ban, well, they are going to spend exactly 0 nights in jail and most likely will only be there for a few hours. Here's the sheriff again explaining what will happen when or if she agrees to book illegal campers sometime in the future.
So when someone is brought into our booking center, they will be searched and fingerprinted so we know the identity of the individual. They will their case will be looked at by a recognizance officer. The presiding judge's order will then guide the release. I anticipate that these individuals will remain in our custody for a few hours. I don't have information on what that looks like as we move forward and how the presiding judge's order will impact individuals that may come into our custody multiple times.
Okay, well, here's my take on all this. First, the idea here is to get homeless campers to accept help by threatening them with jail time if they refuse. That's the carrot and the stick. But guess what? No stick that I can see. At least it's not clear to me yet. Instead, I think we have a carrot and maybe a limp noodle. Let me explain. Tonight, the Multnomah County Sheriff is not going to allow homeless campers to be booked into her jail. Instead, she wants that program set up to offer them help one more time. Once that's all in place, then she will allow the bookings. Now remember, these people will have already had multiple offers before police showed up, and then police are going to offer shelter one more time before arresting them. So, okay, once the program is set up, the sheriff said it could be 2 weeks from now or even longer. Well, then people violating the camping ban in the Portland area can be booked. And during the 2 or 3 hours that they're at the jail, they'll be offered more services. And if they say yes, great. I hope it changes their life. And if they say no, well, they're still not going to be held at the jail. Instead, they're released back to what? Camping again. Check out these statistics from the city of Portland for the week of August 12th through the 18th. 51 people expressed an interest in a shelter referral. 46 people actually accepted shelter referrals. That means they're sent to a place. But just 16 people actually showed up and used a bed for at least one night. That means 34% of people who actually accepted a shelter referral even used it. And here's a big picture look going all the way back to 2022, according to the city. Total shelter referrals since April 11, 2022, 5,009. Now, of that number, the total people who have used a shelter bed from that group, 1,742. Do the math. Once again, that's 34%. So I got to tell you, folks, as I was researching and writing this up just a little while ago, I found myself saying, what are we doing here? We're spending tens of millions of dollars, probably more, setting up shelters that only 34% of the people camping illegally were offered are using. And the only tool that we have to stop illegal homeless camping, fines or jail, is actually so weak that maybe calling it a limp noodle is too generous? Now, I know some of you are now throwing things, maybe noodles, at your screen right now telling me I've lost my mind. Maybe, but we do need to do some soul searching here. What we're doing is not working, and I'm not convinced the future holds much promise that that is going to change. That's my opinion anyway. You don't have to agree, but it would be nice if you communicated. Send me an email, will you? Let me know what you're thinking. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number's 503-226-5090. In the meantime, coming up next, in a Multnomah County Commission briefing today that at times got a bit heated, commissioners got an updated look at how deflection will operate here once drugs are recriminalized in less than 2 weeks. We have an illustration to help you follow along the complicated process. We'll roll it out when the story returns. All right, let's talk about deflection programs being created for the recriminalization of hard drugs in Oregon. It's going to happen on September 1st. Yesterday, we told you that Multnomah County's deflection center will not open in September, instead aiming for mid to maybe late October. Also last night, we shared Washington County's plan with a walkthrough on the process from the district attorney, Kevin Barton, there. Following our story, we heard from several of you who feel like viewers John and Pat. They wrote, Washington and Clackamas County seem to be able to discuss, decide, and implement like adults. I wish we were confident that Multco's continued excuses and lack of action did more than delay and waste funds. We welcome any progress, but we are finding it hard to feel supportive. Hope is not a strategy for success. And how about this from Dawn? I was struck by the preparation in Washington County and that the DA gave us all the details. I did not hear any tone of politics. It seems that in Multnomah County, it is always the county chair saying this or that. The stark contrast here is a county that wants to get something done versus one that is mired in politics. Thanks for your comments. Well, today, Multnomah County commissioners were briefed on the latest version of deflection here in Portland. And much like DA Barton's walkthrough of that deflection and the scenario and what it's going to look like in Washington County, well, Multnomah County commissioners got a similar report. Remember, someone is eligible for deflection only if they have no active warrants out for them, nothing else, and the only crime that they're committing is possession of a soon-to-be illegal drug like fentanyl, whether they're actively using it or not. Now, here's a leader in the county health department explaining how it's going to work.
Once there's the law enforcement encounter and an individual chooses deflection, law enforcement will call the center. That's when the intake process will begin. So we'll get basic information that we'll need, both to be able to start intaking the client as well as meet the reporting needs we have for CJC, et cetera. So once they call, they'll transport the individual to the center. When law enforcement arrives, a peer will meet law enforcement at the door and there'll be a warm handoff to the peer. And it's important to note that the peer will stay with the individual throughout this entire process in the center. So once the individual comes into the center, we'll finish doing intake quickly. Next, they'll go into some standardized screenings. The first of those screenings will be done by a nurse, and it'll be a medical screening to ensure that the individual doesn't have urgent medical needs. If at that point it is determined that the individual does have urgent medical needs, we will transport them out of the facility via EMS services. Assuming that they pass the medical screening and they're safe to stay in the facility, then they would continue with some mental health, substance use disorder, as well as basic needs screenings. So at that point, they would move on to develop a customized care plan in partnership with, the care coordinators / case managers and the peer. At that point, there will obviously be a number of referrals and needs that the individual may have. The team will determine which one of the referrals that we want to track as far as successful deflection. I think it's important to note that we want to track the single referral that will result in successful deflection, but we also want to make referrals, to the other needs that they have. And so at that point, the next step would be supporting the individual via transportation to, if there's an available service that they need, to that service. If there isn't that available service at that moment in time, then we would take them to where they requested to go. We can't. Individuals everybody will have the option to take transportation. We can't, force people to take transportation for not a better way of saying it, but we definitely want to support individuals in that way. And what we've heard from a lot of folks is that we're assuming that most individuals would want to be transported from the facility. So after they leave the facility, the peer, will continue to interact with that individual. We'll track if they've actually completed that service. Again, there's that 30-day window that they have to complete the referral. We also anticipate that we would continue to engage with, individuals past that 30-day time frame.
All right, so not a quick explanation, but it is the clearest example yet that we've been given on what it's all going to look like. Now, the final plan on deflection for Multnomah County will be shared with commissioners and, hopefully the public this Friday, and we'll be watching. And before we leave the story, we also wanted to touch on the deflection center's delayed opening again, because numbers shared with us this morning show that the center was nowhere near ready to open in a week and a half, as kind of we all were led to believe. And after getting a look at these, you may be wondering if October is even feasible. Let's start with this table showing the staff needed from the company to the county is hired to run the deflection center. The company is named Turk House. Look at the top left there where it shows the staff type. Then to the right of that, it shows how many people would be needed if the place was going to open around the clock 7 days a week, which is not going to happen anytime soon. The next column is one shift only number. Well, that represents the minimum staffing needed to open for daytime only services. Okay, so let's focus on that. So they need 2 peers to open, and they've hired 1 who started today. Intake staff is covered for now with 2 folks hired. Care coordinators, 2 are needed. 1 is hired and 1 offer is outstanding. They need 2 nurses to open. Again, only 1 has been hired and 1 offer is out. And no program director has been brought in yet as well. And check out the column showing how long it will take to train someone after they are hired. Well, it shows it's between 2 weeks and 1 month. And during today's briefing, it was pointed out that training cannot even start until those people can get into the building itself. And that may not happen until late next week because it's still being renovated. I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I just think it's outrageous. And here's the county side of things for hiring. Someone in Chair Vega Peterson's office is working as the deflection coordinator until a real coordinator is hired. Otherwise, not a single person has been hired. 0. You can see on the right side that the health department will cover positions until people are hired apparently. No word on when their 2 weeks of training will begin. So yeah, this thing had like no shot of opening on September 1st. Will mid to late October even be possible? I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. Keep it right here. We're back right after this. Well, that's the end of our show. Thank you so much for watching. But remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. No shows next 2 nights because of NBC's coverage of the Democratic National Convention. But we will be right back here on Friday night at 6:30. We'll see you then.